Okay, thank you, Ms. Lisa. Good evening, everyone. I am Nahla Nasser, Interim Head of School, and I am delighted to welcome you to this information session sponsored by the Project Oversight Committee and the Mission Real Estate team of St. Stephen's.
You were late. Please take your things and go.
I'm sorry, I thought somebody was talking.
Yeah,
Right. Okay, thank you, Brent. And the Mission Real Estate team of St. Stephen's Episcopal Church and School. This is an exciting time in the lives of the church and school. So thank you for making time this evening for this hour-long session. The purpose of tonight's session is to give you a historical overview of our development efforts, including the master plan of our campus, phasing, fundraising, and construction plans, so that you will be prepared to fully engage in the vision discussion that will be taking place on Saturday in person or the virtual event on February 2nd. You will also be hearing from Tyler Swanson, who will share the 20-year overview of our master plan. Elizabeth McClintock, who is the chair of the Project Oversight Committee, will be sharing the exciting progress on our new building. And Dwight Wolf, the chair of the Mission Real Estate team, will be presenting the goals of the Mission Real Estate process. You will have 3 opportunities in the meeting tonight to ask questions. You may drop your questions in the chat along the way, or wait and raise your hand after each presentation. Now, I would like to share a video which gives you a sense of our common journey thus far.
The community of St. Stephen's Church and School is starting a new chapter, and it's easy to forget what has already been written. Since our beginnings as a parish and school, we have been inclusive and forward-thinking, and these values have ensured our longevity through the years. In 2015, St. Stephen's completed a feasibility study to explore the highest and best use of our land in the Montrose community, occupying most of an entire block near the Museum District and inside of one of Houston's most historically progressive neighborhoods. St. Stephen's has a vital role to play in creating a thoughtful, more inclusive development of Montrose. In 2016, the church and school completed master plan drawings with options for the use and potential development of our spaces. Through a capital campaign in 2019 and into 2020, we raised over $5 million to begin phase 1 of the master plan. The past 3 years have brought many changes to our lives, the ways we gather, and our community. We are now moving forward with phase 2 of the master plan and invite thoughtful discussion about the values we discerned in years prior and how they relate to our community life today. Please join us as we go, partner, and build for light into the next 100 years.
I want to thank you all for showing up tonight. This is Lisa Hunt. If we could stop the share screen for a moment, please. I'd like to begin or continue our session with a prayer that's been guiding our leaders as we've been gathering together and as we pray weekly. So the Lord be with you.
Also with you.
O God, the creator who provides nests for birds and burrows for foxes, open us to your dreams and visions for this land and its people. Empower us in wisdom to join with partners and build spaces that serve communities. Embolden us to go, partner, build for light. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Amen.
Now we'll share the screen. I want to recognize and thank publicly all the leaders that have been guiding this process over time. The church is governed by a vestry Our leaders are Stephen Bretthauer, Lucy Cockram, Gail Creech, Michael Hawes, David Kelly, Cassandra Katari, Christina Lovely, Dave Morrell, Emily Paul, Susan Rain, John Revelle, and Julia Wolf. The Board of Trustees of St. Stephen's School includes Tyler Swanson as our Vice President, Tamala Singleton, Ali Dasa, Kathleen Camp Murray, Tom Cordell, Gail Creech, Aaron Davis, Jaime Espinosa, Ryan Hackney, Sam Marsh, Dan Maxwell, Paula Patterson, Nakai Payne, Esteban Tirado, and Lucy Tredenick. You've also been guided in these efforts by the Mission Real Estate team that includes Lucy Cockram, Kevin Dalrymple, Ashley Della Giacomo, Ray Figueroa, Susan Hawes, David Kelly, Dave Knoll, Dan Maxwell, Nahala Nasser, Chris Nelson, John Siegel, Tyler Swanson, Owen Tredenick, and Dwight Wolf. And finally, our construction is being guided by Ray, who is our business director of finance and operations for the school, David Kelly, Elizabeth McClintock, Nahala Nasser, Tamala Singleton, Tyler Swanson, Esteban Tirado, and Bill Wooten. These groups have been meeting, go back please. These groups have been meeting weekly and monthly for over 2 years to be able to move us forward in this project. And they represent both leadership at the school and at the church, trustees and vestry members. From its inception, this process has been a collaborative one between the two boards, and our vision is a common vision. That's why we've called you all together tonight, so that you can share in this vision-making process as we continue our charism of building community together. There's some things you need to know about our governance structure. So first of all, it's important to recognize that the school and church are separate nonprofit corporations. The church is the sole member of the schools corporation and appoints the board of trustees. 2/3 of the board of the school are members of St. Stephen's Church. Our life together in terms of space usage and buildings is governed by a memorandum of understanding that embraces this common purpose for our campus and delineates our responsibilities to each other. Neither the school nor the church owned the property outright. It belongs to the Diocese of Texas, which holds all the deeds. And through the church corporation, the Diocese of Texas decides on acquisitions, sales, demolition, and construction. The diocese does not fund any of this work. It's up to us to fund it, and the diocese approves it. As we move forward tonight, it's important that we set some ground rules for how we deport ourselves in community. We've been using these guidelines over time that have been successful for helping us discern and listen carefully to one another, recognizing that we all come from different communication styles and different cultures. So take responsibility for what you say and feel without blaming others. Use empathetic listening, be sensitive to differences in communication and cultural styles. Ponder what you hear and feel before you speak. Examine your own assumptions and perceptions. Keep confidentiality. Gossip is very destructive to the life of community. And tolerate ambiguity, because we're not here to debate. There are no winners or losers tonight. At this time, I would like to introduce Tyler Swanson, if we can go off screen. Tyler has been the vice chair of the board, and as rector, I am always the chair of the board. But Tyler, I've had the blessing to work with for the succeeding 2 years. And I just want to commend and recognize Tyler for the phenomenal leadership and amount of time he has given to both the church and school community. He's an architect and has been very generous with his skills. Tyler, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lisa. So I'm going to share with you some of the work that the video mentioned. The work that I'll be sharing was done by Gensler I think it was about almost 5 years ago now, which was a master plan for the future of the complete campus. And so what you're seeing here in green and gray are the properties that the church and school reside on and own. There was previously also a property across West Alabama that was sold, a parking lot over there. So what you see on the lower right, just to orient you, so West Alabama is at the top. What you see at the lower right bottom corner is the community house, or Coho as the school knows it. And then there's the parking lot across the street from it. And then further down Sul-Ross is the Nevers building, the temporary building there on that piece of land. And then crossing the street, we have the houses that line Sul-Ross, and then the two apartment buildings on Driscoll, the Haven Center, the main parking lot off West Alabama, the Nave, and the Monroe building. So on the next slide, you'll see this is updated actually from the Gensler work. This was more recent. But working with Kirksey, we looked, and I'll show you the overall master plan in a minute, but this is looking at a first phase of the master plan, which really looks at a new building on that parking lot in West Alabama. And so backing up a step, the main goal of the master plan was really to think about how we live with these aging buildings, think about a more efficient and better use of our land. Obviously, Montrose is property values are increasing, density is increasing, and trying to find the way that that this church and school can serve the communities of Montrose, but also be responsible stewards of this land. So one of the ways that the master plan sought to do that was to start to think about more presence on West Alabama. So this first building phase would be a building to really front on West Alabama and be a welcoming space to the campus. It really would be the kind of entry point for all visitors, and it would be sort of the beacon for St. Stephen's. What you're seeing in blue suggested for the first phase are existing buildings that would be renovated. And Elizabeth McClintock will go into more detail on the phase one later in this presentation. Phase 2 and 3 start to show a little more radical change to the campus and a little some bigger developments that would start to rethink how people move on the campus, how and it would also really expand the capacity for both the school and the church. So what you're seeing on the corner of Driscoll and Sul-Ross, where those residential buildings were, and also where the current houses on Sul-Ross are, would be what was conceived as phase 2, which would be a potential partnership with a developer for a residential development. And that's what Dwight will talk to you about later in the presentation. On the corner of Sul-Ross and Woodhead would be a replacement for the Monroe building and the L building. And the master plan even envisioned replacing the Nave building in the future on West Alabama. This is a 3D perspective view from Gensler of the master plan. So what you see is actually a much more dense development on the site, with a series of outdoor spaces, and always trying to keep in mind connections to the outdoors, which was something that I think came out of a lot of the listening sessions with the community, was finding ways to, if we're going to build up, we still need ways to get outside and have connections to the natural environment. So you can kind of see that throughout the plan. This was the vision 5 years ago. This is not exactly where we're headed today. You know, master plans are developed and then evolve as the community evolves and budgets involve. But this was where we were at that time. So I think the next step is to ask if there are any questions about the master planning process.
Are you
Okay.
opening to parents to ask questions? Is that what I understand?
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess developer partnership, can you kind of elaborate a little bit how that was? I don't know if, did you guys put that out to bid or did you include other developers or?
So that is part of what the mission real estate process is right now that Dwight will go through. That was conceived as phase 2. So we're really just beginning on that. Phase 1 was a more traditional kind of project where we hired an architect. We had a RFP process to hire Kirksey Architects. They've been working with us to develop the phase 1 project that Elizabeth will explain. But phase 2, a partnership with the developer, is really kind of, we're at the beginning stages of that. And the event on Saturdays will be an opportunity to get community input before we actually go out to a developer, so that we make sure that whatever is done is meeting the mission of the church and school before we're talking to developers.
And my understanding is you guys did a highest and best use study for this master plan.
Mm-hmm.
What were the uses? I'm a developer, so I'm very curious what your planning process was, to give you a little background. What are the different uses that were considered? Were alternatives to residential considered? I think there was a mixed use mention in some other documents I think I saw, or
The most of, well, for phase 2 is really the only part of that master plan that had any kind of program outside of church and school function. The rest of it was building capacity for the church and school. Phase 2, housing, I think, was the focus, because at the time we were thinking about affordable housing as a potential mission of the church and school, as a way to help people in this community stay in this community as it gets more and more expensive in Montrose. So that was sort of a mission-driven element of it. But I think, Lisa, maybe you or others could.
I think if we could hold that question until we get to the mission real estate section, Luis, I think we'll be able to address that more fully once everybody's got a fuller context. Is that okay?
Sure. Well, so it's just so I understand, phase 1 is adding a building in
Yes.
the church parking lot, and the existing bungalow style homes where the kids are, those stay as they are.
They stay right there right now. Elizabeth will talk you through that.
Okay.
So let's turn the floor over to her.
Sure.
Hi. So I'm going to run through where we are today. We've spent several years coming up to speed with what the program was, what were we trying to design a building for, and hiring an architect who could do that. And last year we worked on the schematic design phase and pretty much finished that. And it was designed to our program. When we put it out to bid for just an estimated bid with the contractor that construction contractor that we're using, Bellows, the construction cost was $10 million, and that was well over our budget of $6.5 million. There were things we tried to do, value engineering, which is getting rid of everything you don't really need and seeing if we can get the cost down to something that we can afford. That didn't do it. So we decided that the right thing to do is to step back and look at our program requirements and scale those down. And we did that and came up with what we're looking at today in a 1-story space instead of a 2-story space. And the program, what we're trying to do, the goal of this building, this new building, originally we were hoping to build everything that we have, what we're housing in the L building, the extra building that connects to the nave between the Monroe building and the nave, because that building is getting very old. We also wanted to add additional areas for growth. And I'm afraid that that's what we had to scale back on. But what we're designing will essentially replace what's in the L building and allow us to tear that down when we're done.
The
So we
L building is
realized-
where the orientation classrooms currently are, along with the church offices and school offices and the reception area.
Thanks, Lisa. So we revised the schematic design with that, and then we began the design development phase, which is just going into more details about what it's really going to look like. We did that based on the smaller building. We're trying to keep it in the project budget. That's been really an important focus for us. We want to build the building, even though it's 1-story, build it so that it can take a 2nd story when we have more funds that are available and we can expand up. And we're working on the exterior details of the new building and the connection to the nave. So we're not quite done with that, but we're getting close on that, what it will look like when you drive up to it. Next screen. The budget is something we've kept in the forefront. Our current project budget is 6.5. We have funds from a variety of sources. The church has contributed through Silent Face Partners and the Capital Campaign. The school has contributed by applying for grants and applying and receiving grants, pledges from the school members, and a portion of the tuition, which is pledged to go to the Capital Campaign. We sold a piece of property we had across the street from the Haven Center, next door to the Davino's place. And then we are also collecting rent from the Driscoll Apartments. COVID-19 had an impact on this project. And it was one of the reasons that the construction came in much higher, is because of just constructions went up. And it did all over the place. It was a little bit of a surprise for everybody. It also has COVID affected the school enrollment, and the church attendance was down. See, Lisa, you put a chat out. The sale of the community house, okay, will also be sold as a part of phase 1 funding, which will help. But what we're doing is we're trying to be good stewards of the money that we have. We're trying to pay attention to the site. The city of Houston is very interested in making sure that our water detention is up to code, because it has to be. And all these things have driven up the cost a little bit, but we are, we're feeling pretty confident with what we have right now. Do you want to go to the next slide? So we're in the construction drawings phase right now. That's the 3rd phase of this project. The vestry and the school board approved to move forward with construction drawings. And we are focusing on the new, the building itself, the water detention requirements. We applied for an early permit to be grandfathered in. When the city was changing the water detention requirements, we were able to get grandfathered with the old one. And so that will help keep the cost down on that. Our new building will include a welcome center. It'll have 2 new spaces for orientation classes, space for the middle school. I think that's going to be for the humanities area in the middle school. It'll have a choir room, music room, and then offices for the rector, head of school. It'll also have some areas for work areas, coffee bar, reception area. And then the other improvements in this project that we're looking at are landscaping, new playground and a courtyard, surface water detention, which will end up being where this L building, a lot of the detention will be there as sort of an open space. We'll have a new parking lot, which will be on Driscoll and Sul Ross, and it'll face Driscoll. and renovations to the nave to connect to the Monroe, to the Welcome Center, and more accessible entrances to the Monroe building itself. I'm going to show you some pictures. They are not final, but they will give you an idea of where we're headed. This is another site plan that shows you where the existing one-story building on the top right corner is the nave, and then the one-story building in the middle there connects to the nave. That will be the new building. The parking lot is in the lower left corner, and the rest of the buildings are as they are, with the Haven Center and the 3 schoolhouses, the Monroe building, the parking lot in front of the Monroe building, all that stays put. And the L building, which used to connect to the nave, it was the L part of the nave, would be, once we're able to move everything into the new building, then we will demolish the nave and build out the courtyard and the water detention. So you want to go to the next slide? This is a floor plan of the building, and it shows how we will connect to the nave. The main reception area is going to be through into the new building, and it will have a door that leads into the nave that way. There'll be the middle school is the purple in the top left corner of the drawing. The choir room is next to that, and the light blue are the 2 orientation rooms, and they all let out to some playground areas that you can see. They're just in white here. Next slide. This gives you an idea of what it will look like from above. Unlike the picture, it's not quite as tall as the Gensler slide that we showed at the end, but it's a 1-story building. It has a ramp that will enter in, and a covered ramp, and there'll be a place for drop off, although the main main entrance for the children will be on the other side of the building. So this is the one on the left is looking from Alabama, and the one on the right is looking from Sul Ross, where the church and well, actually it's looking from Woodhead, I'd say. Next slide. This is a picture of what the entrance will probably look like close to it. We're not quite there. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, Tyler says potential 2nd and 3rd floor for this building. So we're building the 1st floor out, but even as we design what the front looks like, we're thinking in terms of what will it look like when we add more floors. So next slide. This is another just a picture of how it will look as you come in through the drop-off area and off of Alabama. The main entrance being not the church where it is now, but the doors are still there, but the main entrance will be through the Welcome Center. And the next slide. This is what it will look like from between the Monroe building and the church will be this green space. This doesn't show any plantings or anything. That's something that will come later, but this will also serve as water detention in this area if it gets to be that way. But the covered area would be the main entrance for the students coming in the morning off of the Sul Ross parking lot. Next slide. This is a rendition of what the Welcome Center could look like. It's not final, it's just the architect drew it, added some color to it, but it will be a big open space. It'll be about 3 times the size of the gathering area that right now the nave lets out to. So it'll be a lot larger, a lot more airy. There's a reception desk near the back doors, I guess, the Sul Ross side of the doors, and then a coffee bar towards the front of towards Alabama. Next slide. This is a picture of one of the rooms. This would be an orientation room. We're still working on all of it. I think this isn't final, but it shows kind of what it will look like. You'll have a door, some windows, you'll have this little area with cabinets and such. And questions?
Hi, John Wilson. Since we
Yes.
looked at the orientation room slide, just the last slide,
Uh-huh.
can you tell me what other uses the orientation rooms will provide?
Well, during church on Sunday, I think that one of the rooms will double as a nursery. I don't know if there are other planned usages. It's possible we would do a children's chapel there on Sunday. But right now, during the week, it would just be for orientation. That it would be replacing the 2 orientation rooms that get lost in when we move out of the L building. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm not too sure what orientation is. What-
Orientation is our
there you go.
youngest children, so they are 15 months old to 3 years old.
Oh, good. Oh, perfect.
Sorry, I had to struggle with that one for a while too.
The middle school space is also a dual function space. That'll serve as the meeting space
Right.
for the church and other users. So it's also kind of a flexible dual purpose space.
And the choir room will serve as the choir room for the choir when they meet, and for the children, it'll be the music room.
Hi, I'm Deborah Gilbreth. I'm relatively new. We have Ryan, who is in upper L, 6th grade, looking forward to moving to middle years. And so I heard or read about the selling of the Coho building, but could you talk a little bit about the transition? Like what happens to the middle years kids while you are constructing this lovely new facility? Like where will they be during construction?
Are you going to take that, Lisa?
Sure, Deborah, I think that the plan right now is that we would keep the community house and the L building. Everything keeps functioning the way it is until the new building is constructed. And then sales and demolition will happen. And we'll be keeping the notion of moving from place to place with the middle years students so that science will not be located in the new building. It will be on another portion of the campus to be determined.
And may I just say one other thing, that obviously this is going to be more to the parents that are on this call who have 6th, 7th, 8th graders, is that, you know, I'm trying to figure out how to say this, and I'm also part of the middle years task force that we've been trying to work on to give you some feedback, hopefully, on what parents are looking for. Is can we try not to ignore kind of the current physical condition?
No, exactly. So there's a commitment this year with our annual fund and in the budget to do some major improvements to the Coho aesthetically and functionally. So we will keep that operating and as attractive as it can be, recognizing that the investments that we're making in that facility right now are sunk costs into the future.
It would help support, I think, the efforts of what the task force is trying to do.
Absolutely.
We're trying to attract more students to the middle years program, and you know, facilities are a concern of parents and students. And so selling the new building is easy because it's beautiful and those renderings are amazing. But for the next few years, we have to exist within the Coho.
Totally, and we're on it.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions?
Go ahead, Randy. Please.
I was wondering what the rationalization is for tearing down the nave.
The nave actually is not being torn down in this phase. It would be the very last thing that happens in the master plan, phase 3. So I'm not sure.
That would be maybe 20 years from now.
Yeah, it's.
But still, what would be the rationalization for doing that?
Go ahead, Lisa.
I think space is going to be a premium as we grow and as this part of Houston gets denser. And right now, Stan, the nave is used solely for worship along with public gatherings. So it's not an efficient use, it is a sacred use. And we will always have sacred space on the campus of St. Stephen's. But whether it's that corner and whether it's in that configuration, the Vestry School Board decided that we needed to be open to think about change within this 25-year horizon.
Okay.
And there was another question, I think? Yeah, Luis?
Oh, no, I lost my train of thought. It's okay.
Ask it later if you think about it.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Oh, I guess it's more about, so you said construction documents are pretty much done and you guys are going to go through a bid process?
The construction documents are in process. They are not done, but that's what we're working on the next couple of months. And we have a construction contractor who we've been working with all along to help give us bids, estimates, I guess they're really called estimates of what it looks like each time we have a set of drawings. And when we get the final construction documents, then he'll take those out, send them out for bid at that point.
So Luis, we're using a construction manager at risk model for this project, which is what the diocese recommends. And
I assume they have a whole protocol for any kind of improvements to their grounds and the diocese grounds. So they have probably committees and all sorts of other things that are reviewing and making decisions.
The church?
Yes.
Diocese?
Yeah.
We will ultimately also go to the church corporation with all this information to get
I'm
there.
just curious where it was in the bidding process, or if it was, so we're talking like a year from now.
I think the
If there's
contracts maybe a little like mid-year. What we're trying to do is get the construction documents finished so that we can apply for a building permit,
Mhm.
which I'm told is anywhere from 4 to 6 months or 6 to 12 months, depending on who's doing the looking. But nonetheless, there's a period of time before the city of Houston will return us with a building permit.
I see. But by then you would have a contractor locked up, I'm guessing?
We already have a contract.
We have a contractor. Assuming his bid meets our budget, then we would go with Bellows.
Do you go through a bidding process with multiple contractors?
We did that.
Well, we didn't do a bidding process. We did a selective, an RFP process for a construction manager at risk. So they will, so they will give us, this is a little detail for the group, but they will give us basically a guaranteed maximum price, a GMP, and they will take it out to the market and they will bid all their trades. So that will all be bid out, but they've been working with us all along so that we know what our budget is, what we're building towards, and that they've been giving input to the architects as we go so that the architects don't get ahead of the budget.
Interesting. That's just
And
curious.
we'll just emphasize that there's not a final timeline yet. We're working with it as we move along, but and when we do get a timeline, I will point out to all these school parents, the school's schedule is actually being figured into the construction timeline, and the contractor and architects are both well aware of when school dates are and when's a good time to do something. And so we're trying to take into account what impact it will have on the campus and when we start stuff, when we're, whatever we're doing. So
Mhm.
getting the permit will be one thing, but matching it into school schedules is another. And so that's when we'll have a better idea of when we're going to be doing the building, once we have all these pieces.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Turn it over to Dwight now to talk about our mission real estate process.
Thank you, group. We'll go to the slides. What I'd like to introduce the idea is that about a year ago, we came to the realization that because of COVID and its impact on both school population as well as church attendance and the reality of where we were with our capital campaign, we believed it would be prudent to at least ask the boards to look at exploring the bringing on phase 2 while we were in phase 1, and at least looking at the possibility of what it would be to fast forward that second phase. And so the governing boards made the decision. So now we're going to give you a little bit of a shift. What Elizabeth has been presenting now, we call that Plan A. And Plan B is the Mission Real Estate Initiative, in which we are taking that second phase and moving it forward and beginning that work. The importance of this is really twofold. It is looking at where we sit on a valuable piece of land, and how can this land be used at its highest and best use, while maintaining the mission of the church, the core values of the church and school, and the vision of who we are as a church in the Montrose. We're in the process right now, and that's what Saturday's meeting and Thursday evening of next week's meeting is really about, is looking at these core values that we called out as we over the last 8 years, as we began the visioning process and the valuing process and ramping up to even a master plan. But we declared that these were our core values. So what we'll be doing on Saturday and next week is really making sure that these are still our core values and solidifying our vision around these values, so that when we do go out seeking a developer and other community partners, that we know exactly who we are and what our vision is and what our mission is. And we would be partnering with a developer who shares these values and vision for who we are on this corner. The design principles came out of the work on the master plan. As you can see, there was great value in looking at how we can use all of our spaces as much as possible, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. John Wilson's question a while ago, I think, was a good one, because while a room is being used through the week, Monday through Friday, by the school, it then flips over to use by the church. Then it flips over to use in the evenings by maybe a community organization, maybe the Scouts, or maybe a community organization is looking for places to meet. Universal design really is the principle around which we want to make sure that all of our buildings are visitable, that are open to the differently abled, and we make sure that we are opening our campus to the greatest number of people possible in the safest possible way. We want to be green, not only achieving an efficient and sustainable use of materials in our construction, but also making sure that our campus, what Tyler alluded to a while ago, is as we go up, we still want to be able to maintain these corridors that are part of our campus, that invite our students and our parishioners and our community to walk into our lot, into the block, and enjoy its space. We want it to be intimate and not institutional. We want it to be hold the value of beauty and call out within ourselves the value of what beauty means to us and how it draws us together. And one of the things that we had talked about in the development of the master plan is that this campus has been seen for years as the living room for the Montrose. The Montrose is a dynamic community that is going through not only gentrification, but looking for ways to make sure that it is an accessible, inviting, and a community that respects and encourages different modes of transportation and use. About a year ago, the governing boards, the school and church, gave the MRET, the Mission Real Estate Group, the permission to go to Trinity Wall Street, skip a place and seek a grant from them. Trinity Wall Street is a dynamic and forward-looking parish at the tip of Manhattan Island, and they are literally looking to invest in communities all over the world to create sustainable communities, to also look at how land can be used to address equality issues, and to make sure that that what we are building is both sustainable, not only from the standpoint of it being quality of material that is respectful of the earth, but also whatever they invest in, they want to make sure that the project itself is sustainable, that it actually will generate the funds to make sure that it is able to cover its cost and look for ways of expanding mission. So we were awarded a $130,000 grant. We had to match that with $20,000 of our capital campaign. And so we were awarded that last June, and we began the process of looking for a real estate professional consultant who could help us not only solidify our vision and values and know what our non-negotiables would be in dealing with the developer. And then their second part of their work would be to help us develop the RFP for a developer, and then issue that RFP, and then go through the selection process for the securing of a developer. So what we're doing on Saturday and next week is absolutely essential, because we want to know very clearly who we are and what we see as the purpose of this land, so that when we do go out looking for a developer, we're looking for someone who shares our values, shares our vision, and is ready to partner with us. This is the timeline that was presented to us in our RFP from HR&A. You can see that we're in this first phase of the visioning, and we are right on schedule in the first workshop. For the next 7 days, we'll have 2. There'll be focus groups, and they're already doing some interviews with parishioners. They will develop focus groups and be interviewing those folks. And finally, there'll be a second workshop later in the spring. All of this is to roll up so that late in the spring, we will be in a position to clarify our objectives, and then start the process of identifying possible developers, and then go through the RFP process. Solidifying our community values and establishing those non-negotiables, as I said, is really the important work that we have got to do before we go to phase 2 of this of the visioning and the selection of a developer. So you see the dates that where we are tonight in preparation for Saturday's meeting, and then to replicate that meeting in a virtual setting on Thursday of next week for those who cannot attend tomorrow. Along with this process, we began, just to clarify this, we began this process about a year ago with about 50 parishioners gathering together to look at the gospel and to start the discernment work of how do we even begin to think about who do we select as a partner? How do we live into our mission on this property? To that end, we have the collect that we prayed at the beginning of this meeting. was prayed, and that collect is used in worship services and in our formal and informal groups. Have been using this song for almost a year now. And Ashley will be leading the meditation for people in place on Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock during the in the Lenten season. And the importance of this is that this is spiritual work, and every bit of this is about a mission around how can we find the best use, highest and best use of this property within the context of who we are called to be as Christians in this place. And so prayer and the Spirit is what is leading this process, and what is informing this process, and what is energizing each of us to do this work. And so I would really invite you to be part of those weekly prayer gatherings. And then there'll be other future events will be announced. We'll open the floor to questions.
Since you touched on highest best use, typically that spans all sorts of uses: residential, commercial, retail, mixed use, parking garage, all sorts of expanding, just keeping it focused to school. Are these future meetings to kind of narrow down the scope of uses that you would use to ultimately do an assessment, run your cash flows, discount them back, and say which one gives you the highest, value of that land?
Luis, that would have to be part of the process, because given our relationship with Trinity Wall Street and what we're entering into here, there has to be cash flow from this project for this property, because we see that cash flow as part of allowing us to live into who we are, and as to where mission is concerned. And so it's not just generating funds to make sure that we can maintain our buildings, it's also generating funds so we can live into our call to be mission.
When you say generating cash flows, do you mean through tuitions, through enrollment, increased enrollment?
No.
If one option is to make the school
no,
bigger?
what I'm really referring to is in the master plan that we had this vision of a residential tower on that southwest corner and of the property. What HRNA showed us back in 2015 and 2016 is that depending upon the number of affordable units in that tower, we would be generating an annual income of somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000, depending upon the number of those units. The higher the number of the units, the lower that net would be. And so that'll be part of the decision, what type of housing goes in there. But the goal is absolutely to make sure that is generating income.
When you say affordable housing, do you mean like actual like HUD certified affordable housing?
Luis, I think we need to make time for other people to ask questions too. So I think part of the calculus will be what kind of affordable housing, what kinds of funding might be available. Right now, we're not taking any of that off of the table, but we know our teachers need affordable housing, firefighters need affordable housing. Montrose is not affordable.
No, I only say it in the sense that there's a government defined affordable housing versus, like, in general affordable housing according
exactly. And so that'll be part of the calculus. Do we go after federal money or not?
I'll stop talking.
Okay, I appreciate the quality of your questions. I'm just aware we want to be able to create space for others as well.
Thank you, Lisa.
I would just like to, it's maybe more of a comment than it is a question, because you may be too early in the process, but just, you may not know this, I'm a real estate attorney. I do commercial development. And so what I have seen in many transactions is when you do a joint venture, one thing that you really want to consider is that you're like-minded in what your exit strategy is. Because the key is we as a St. Stephen's community will need to retain ownership of this, right?
Oh, absolutely. Deborah, that was one of the things Dwight didn't say. Could you talk about the land lease, Dwight?
Yeah, we would be employing the land lease concept that has not been used here in Houston or in the state of Texas very much, but it's been around for a long time. And we would be maintaining ownership of all the property, or I should say the Diocese of Texas will be maintaining that ownership. And we're modeling this around what has happened with the parish in Ballard and Seattle, St. Luke's. Did I say that right? St. Luke's Parish is doing this process, and they're already well along, and they are maintaining ownership of the land, and that's part of that income delta. Is that
And
we will,
hopefully a profit participation. And generally it's a ground lease, and you do it's a multiplying factor of how you would get a return on your investment. My main concern would just simply be that you wouldn't get squeezed out by a developer who could raise a lot of funds on a dime. Luis knows it, right? That would be my only, and again, like I said, it's more of a comment than just making sure that we protect ourselves. And
There's like very conflicting interests between nonprofit and profit. Yeah, so
it's hard to find a true pure-hearted, and no offense to any developer, but that your interests are truly aligned. Because many developers have to sell the property in order to generate funds to do their next development. They don't have the wherewithal to stay with you in the long haul, but the ground lease is an excellent idea. And I have utilized them many times in Texas, not for public-private, but for private. So I think that is, that makes me feel better. And I would also say too, please consider restricting whatever property you sell, because as you know, we have no zoning. And so if you are considering a use, prohibit the use so you don't have a competing building unless it's complementary.
Okay.
And I'll be quiet. That's enough for me.
thank you.
Nakai?
Hi. Yeah, I just I always get a bit you wouldn't think I have a master's in business, but I always get very pedestrian when it comes to the numbers. And the big question I have in my head is, are we clear on, what we can afford? And what can we afford? Or, is there where's the other part coming, right? Hey, there needs to be another big capital campaign, or, is there something that we need to, like the big statement is like, hey, look, our budget is 5 million or 6 million. We got 3. The way we're going to actually have to make this work notionally is, here's everything that's going to have to go together to pay for this. That's the part I'm like, I'm not able to glean those simple statements. Like, I assume everybody's moving forward because we can afford this. I just haven't heard it said explicitly.
Well, I think,
Yeah, sorry. That's
no,
a statement
I
or
think that's
question.
a
I
very
don't know what you're
important
asking.
point. And I think what Luis had talked earlier about growing the school in terms of enrollment, this is enrollment season, and we want more people to be benefiting from a St. Stephen's education. So growth in enrollment is part of it. And I think we will be looking at another capital campaign to help build out this phase and to be able to grow upward on phase 1. We don't have a timeline for that today, but I think that you should expect that to be coming.
Okay, that was the kind of things I'm looking to hear, because in my head, I'm like, well, there's got to be a capital campaign coming, and there's some other stuff that's got to come, to pay for this. But it sounds like that's part of the team's work. So thank you.
Well, we are at our time, and we said that we would be an hour long, and this is the first of other opportunities to connect. Your next opportunity is going to be Saturday. I'd remind you that our our incoming head of school will be here to meet and greet us at 9 o'clock in the big playground. If it rains, we'll be in the Haven Center. So rain or shine, we're going to be meeting Dr. Troy Roddy. And then from 10 until noon in Pecor Hall, we'll be engaged in this visioning. And I'm so thankful for the expertise that was on this call and the passion. And we really want to hear your input. So we hope that you will come Saturday from 10 to noon. And if that doesn't work for you, the following Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. virtually.